If you've never thought, gee, I guess I like video game music, then go and listen to the Bastion soundtrack right now. I don't like hearing that I can't compare apples and oranges. Why not? They're both fruit, they're both full of vitamin C, and you can put them in smoothies and pies. So I'm gonna do something a little strange. I'm gonna compare Bastion and Transistor in terms of music and sound design. For both of these games, Transistor especially, it's hard to talk about the music without spoiling the games themselves. Bastion has been out for like 4 years now though, so tough luck? Yeah, I'm gonna start with Bastion. Okay, so Bastion is an isometric, that's video game for bird's eye view, RPG that follows the kid through a floating post-apocalyptic world with his trusty hammer and cannon, or sword and pistols, or machete and bow. You get the idea, there's weapons in the game. The game progresses as you upgrade your weapons and walk through the unique levels, and while you're walking through the levels, you'll probably notice a sweet tune or two. These tunes are made by this guy, Darren Korb. If Darren Korb could name his own genre of music in this game, he'd call it acoustic frontier trip hop, which means to us that it's trip hop with Western and Middle Eastern instruments. How does it hold up in the game? Well, the soundtrack actually fits in the weird level designs well enough. I was engrossed in the game because the sound design was unique, even though stylistically it sounds more like an album based on a game instead of a soundtrack to the game. The songs are complemented by the sound effects and Logan Cunningham's sexy voice over the character Rux.
Kid succeeds where the calamity failed.
When the songs are played in the game, it feels as if a story is being told, which was the intention of the game, so good on them. There's a couple of tracks on here with beautiful vocals by Ashley Barrett, and Darren Korb himself adds his voice, and this all adds emotion to the story. The game, although being an RPG, does a great job of avoiding cutscenes, and decides to tell the story through the music to optimize your dollar to gameplay ratio. Since this was Supergiant's and Darren Korb's first RPG, there was a lot of experimentation involved with the sound design. At the beginning of the game, more time was put into the sound effects, and later on, Korb started using his own mouth to make them. It's not lazy, it's efficient. A lot of the encapsulation here is done by Rux, who actually changes his narration based on how you're playing the game.
He has the nerve to flash the shield he stole.
Sweet. In fact, the game does sound design well enough that the lack of sound is incredibly tasteful. I'm looking at you, completely heartbreaking part. To be completely honest, I got the soundtrack before buying the game, and then after a few listens, I decided, yeah, you know, I guess I can check this out. I still listen to the soundtrack. All of these songs are memorable. I can go back to these tracks. It stands up great to the test of time, and since most of the tracks on this album are quite dancey, it feels appropriate to put on in public. Even the lyrics and the vocal tracks are obscured enough that you can play it in front of your friends and they won't even know it comes from a video game. If you know anyone who wants to listen to video game soundtracks but has no idea where to start, lead them here. The tracks here are a wonderful blend of electric guitars and acoustic instruments and Apple loops. Wait, what? I need sunglasses for this part.
But how could Darren Korb use Apple loops? Isn't that like copyright infringement?
Nope. These loops actually come with Logic Pro. There's a huge database of free sounds to use.
Well then, isn't that just dishonest songwriting?
There's a bit of gray area there. If a sound designer only used the loops from Apple Loops and then sold that track as their own, I would consider that dishonest. But Darren Korb put so much around these loops that he turned these tracks into his own. Since the loops are provided to help shorten the music writing process, taking a drum fill or a pre-made orchestral loop to help establish a mood isn't that bad. Heck, some of the biggest pop songs use generic Apple loops.
Well, I guess.
You're welcome. I'm gonna get back to the topic. So, yeah, the soundtrack stands out great on its own. For me, it does an even better job of that than it does in the game itself. Okay, so that's Bastion. It won awards and stuff. You get it. I like the game. What about Transistor? Okay, so Transistor is an isometric, that's bird's eye view, in video games, RPG that follows the protagonist Red through a city that wants to kill her as she bears her sword Transistor and moves that look like programming functions. The game progresses as you upgrade your combos and walk through the unique levels, and while you're walking through the levels, you'll probably notice a sweet tune or two. These tunes are made by this guy, Darren Korb. If Darren Korb can name his own genre of music in the game, he'd call it old world electronic post-rock, which to us means that it's trip-hop with darker melodies and old European instruments. But how does it hold up in the game?
Hey, wait a minute, Alex, that's almost the same script as Bastion.
Yeah, deal with it. Anyway, in the game, the music is fantastic. It flows from level to level, and once again, Ashley Barrett is brought on to add lyrics to the tracks, this time actually voicing the protagonist, who loses her voice at the beginning of the game.
They took your voice.
The songs with lyrics are meant to be songs that Red wrote earlier in her career that describe her current situation, or something. I don't know.
Hey, let's just go.
A feature that makes me enjoy the sounds in Transistor more than in Bastion is this. Holy shit. Let's do that again. Holy shit. The The fact that the game seamlessly transitions between different versions of a track is really big for immersion. I can't praise this enough. This does a lot to allow players to play the game the way they want, where louder music is incorporated during the live action sections and quieter music during the slowed down sections. In general, the game does a good job going between tracks and progressing the story.
Stop them.
There are some cutscenes, but they do not take away from the quality of the game, since some scenes use lyrical tracks, and this lets you pay attention to the music and the plot development instead of being swarmed by these robots.
Damn. Young lady here to see.
I really like the soundtrack during the game. It does much better than Bastion for consistency and transitioning, but it does not hold up as well as Bastion outside of the game. I've been listening to this soundtrack since it came out, and I play it about as often as I do the Bastion one, but it's not as memorable. I actually had a moment where I was listening to the Transistor soundtrack, and my music player closed, and I couldn't find what song I was on. This doesn't dismiss the soundtrack's quality though. It's pretty good background music for studying or doing art or scripting videos or playing the game. There are a handful of tracks that do stand out to me, those being the lyrical ones and the one with the accordion, Waterwall. The climax of We All Become is powerful and defining of the game, which is likely why it was selected for the trailer. So both Transistor and Bastion are great games play-wise and sound-wise. The reason I'm comparing them though is to show the video game soundtracks are dynamic even when created by the same person using similar assets. The Bastion original soundtrack is fantastic for outside listening, while the Transistor soundtrack flows better with the game. Let me know what you think about the Bastion and Transistor soundtrack and what you think of this review style. Also, my friend Sammer and I run a podcast called BitQuips, where we talk about video games focused around a topic. He also does Let's Play videos on his channel Starstorm Plays. Thanks for watching!